All right, President Trump is about to cap off another busy day at the G7 summit with a dinner between world leaders. And at the center of his conversations is, of course, the U.S. deal with Iran, set to be formally signed on Friday. Our senior White House correspondent, Peter Doocy, is reporting live in Geneva, Switzerland on all of that for us. Hello, Peter.
And Sandra, as we look ahead to that signing ceremony at a resort in Luzerne, Switzerland on Friday, we should not expect to see J.D. Vance handing a big check over to his Iranian counterparts. President Trump is explaining here on the sidelines of the G7 that there is a difference between giving Iran $300 billion and letting them have access to a $300 billion reconstruction fund.
We're allowed to go and invest if we wanted to someday in the future. We have no obligation whatsoever. It could be that Iran will turn out to be successful when they have oil. But if we left a week ago, just left, before the last two attacks, it would have taken them 20 years to rebuild Iran. So, but I'll go over the document with the media in a couple of days.
And this is what the president is getting at. The Wall Street Journal has an item that just crossed a few minutes ago. The U.S. will allow Iran to immediately begin selling oil and fuel under the deal to end the war, offering Tehran an early financial incentive to wind down the conflict. People familiar with the agreement said the provision for waivers on sanctions on oil sales takes effect immediately upon signing the agreement this week. And that fits with the two-step process the vice president's been talking about. Step one, Iran stops pursuing a nuke. Step two, Iran gets to rejoin the global economy. Something that President Trump needs, though, is the elimination of enriched uranium. He told us a few weeks ago he has decided against a mission to go and take the so-called nuclear dust out, but he does want it done away with in place.
We have the equipment. We're in no rush, but we get it, and when we get it, we'll destroy it.
Is that part of
We're not looking to take it, we're looking to destroy it. We have plenty of it.
And it seems like one possibility for the complete lack of specific details surrounding this memorandum of understanding so far is that the details don't exist. We're hearing from the president, we're hearing from J.D. Vance that it is a very general document. So it's possible that we don't have details because nobody does. Sandra.
And that could be a problem. We'll be watching for more of those details. Peter Doocy, thank you. John?
Sandra, let's bring in former Secretary of State and Fox News contributor Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, good to be with you this afternoon. In terms of the details, we kind of know a broad framework of this memorandum of understanding. The president and other administration officials have said it will be coming out. And in fact, this morning in Geneva, the president said this about it. Listen here.
I'll not only release it, I'll probably have a press conference and read it to you word by word. Unlike Obama, who could have destroyed the Middle East with a horrible JCPOA, it is the worst agreement. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. Mine is a wall against a nuclear weapon. I mean, I see these people say, but we already had one. That was the worst. He paid a fortune for it. We paid nothing.
So we don't know if we can compare it to the JCPOA, but certainly a lot of people are rushing to do so. Should they just hold their fire until we know what's in it?
Well, John, it's great to be with you. Yeah, we should all just hold our fire. We should get a chance to see this document just as soon as possible. Everybody's out telling stories. The Iranians are out telling stories. The Israelis are out telling stories. There's reporters who think they've got the latest scoop. Let's see what the document actually says. President Trump can't go back to the JCPOA because he's already done far more than Barack Obama ever did. Right? The Iranians are far, far, far away from a nuclear weapon compared to where they were when President Obama and Secretary Kerry and Robert Malley and Wendy Sherman signed a horrible deal that put the whole world at risk. And so we're already in a better place. What I hope is that the stories that there's going to be a lot of money transferred to the regime because we think they're going to become a normal nation and they're going to give up their desire for a nuclear weapon. Mm-hmm. John, I must say my interactions with the Iranians, my observations are that is not happening. They do not want to be a normal nation. They're not sorry for what they've done for the last 47 years. They are theocrats still intent on the destruction of Israel and the United States of America. And so we need to take down their capabilities. That means no money. That means an effort to make sure that it's very difficult for the regime to continue to kill its own people. If the deal can achieve that, it will have been a successful outcome and a worthy campaign by President Trump and our military.
To your point there about the money and whether or not Iran should receive any, we hear that somewhere built into this deal, there's this idea of an up to $300 billion fund that would be fronted by Gulf nations to help Iran rebuild infrastructure, oil infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, if they play ball and they fundamentally change as a nation. Here's what the vice president said about that this morning.
You see the propagandists who are saying, here are all the things Iran gets. And the fine print, which actually the big print in the actual agreement is, they don't get any of that stuff unless they totally transform themselves as a country. And if they do, that's a huge win for everybody, for the region. If they don't, no skin off our backs.
I mean, obviously it would be a huge win for the region if Iran were to fundamentally give up its terrorist ideologies and its death to America and Israel mantra and become a functional member of the community of nations. But as you point out, there's very little chance of them doing that, which would mean, I guess, that there's very little chance of them getting any access to this fund.
Yes, if the vice president's statement is accurate, and the Iranians, importantly, and the Iranians understand it that way, which has yet to be seen. By the way, not just the Iranians, the people who matter, not the guy who's going to sign the agreement, the IRGC, who's firmly in control, and the Ayatollah. If those folks decide they want to become a normal nation, sign me up for folks going in there and investing. But, John, I have to tell you, it seems like the probability of that is very low to me.
Yeah.
So fair enough, they won't get any money. What I hope does not happen is that we take our foot off their neck while we have the chance to achieve an outcome that is extraordinary for the United States of America. And President Trump set the conditions for that by giving them money, whether that's through a direct transfer or a transfer from a third party, or even releasing things that they say, quote, is the Iranians' own money. That would be a mistake because, John, you've seen this before. We've seen this bad movie. That money is not going to provide health care, medicine, and food for the Iranian people. It is going to go to rebuild their missile program, rebuild the IRGC, buy more weapon systems from Russia and from China. That money that goes to the Iranian regime will be used for a bad purpose. If I'm wrong and the Iranians have turned over a new leaf, there would be no one who would be happier than me.
You know, I haven't seen many leopards actually change their spots, so I'm kind of with you on that. I wanted to ask you about this because this plot against the UFC Freedom 250 event on Sunday night really seems to be frightening because there were 4,300 attendees on the south lawn of the White House. 1,200 of those were active duty service members. And then just south of the south lawn on the ellipse, there were 85,000 people at a viewing party. If it had not been for this mother in Ohio who noticed suspicious activity by her son, firearm purchases, talking to nefarious people, not being able to tell her what was going on, God knows what could have happened.
John, this is absolutely frightening. Bless that mother for doing the right thing, if that's in fact how this all unfolded. Good work by the FBI. You know, it reminds me, John, when I was a CI director, how many times I saw amazing work by law enforcement, the FBI, by our intelligence partners around the world. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act that's now lapsed was often part of that. It may not have been here. We need to be ever vigilant. Terrorists now can have very cheap, very capable weapon systems. We've seen that in the Middle East and in Ukraine. We are in a very dangerous place with respect to this technology, and our law enforcement needs to be unleashed to make sure that we can continue to protect the American people from precisely the kind of threats that these people were trying to plot against the UFC that night.
Yeah, it really is frightening what this plot allegedly had planned. Mr. Secretary, always good to catch up with you. Thanks for spending time today.
Thank you, John.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.